So if you have a pew Bible, I'm going to give you some time to go to page 1427 in your pew Bible. I carefully looked that up because this is one of those small and overlooked books called Amos. So turn to the book of Amos, chapter 6. I'll give you a little bit of a highlight of what was kind of significant about Amos. He was believed by many scholars to be probably a not well-educated man. He was a farmer. We don't know if he owned the farm or if he just worked the farm. But from out of the blue, God called him to be a prophet to people who were living high on the hog in luxury in Israel, in various places, even some other people who weren't. He mostly talked to the northern kingdom, I believe, but he actually sidesteps for a little bit to talk to the southern kingdom in chapter 6 here. As I read this chapter, some things kind of look painfully familiar. So let's take a look at what's in there. This is Amos chapter 6. If it's in your pew Bible, 1427. And of course, if you have your phones, you can just look it up there and find it nice and quickly and easily as well. So if you haven't already done that. So let's read the word. I'm going to read the entire chapter of Amos chapter 6. Woe to those who are at ease in Zion, and those who feel secure in the mountain of Samaria, the distinguished men of the foremost of nations, to whom the house of Israel comes. Go over to Calneh, and look, and go here to Hammon the Great. Then go down to Gath of the Philistines. Are they better than these kingdoms? Or is their territory greater than yours? That's a rhetorical question. You know what the answer was? They were at one time, and they're not now. If you do your history, you would understand what the context of that question was if you were living in Israel at that time. So let me keep going. Do you put off the day of calamity? And would you bring near the seat of violence? Those who recline on beds of ivory and sprawl on their couches and eat lambs from the flock and calves from the midst of the stall, who improvise to the sound of the harp and like David have composed songs for themselves, who drink wine from sacrificial bowls, while they anoint themselves with the finest of oils. Yet they have not grieved over the ruin of Joseph. Therefore, they will now go into exile at the head of the exiles, and the sprawlers' banqueting will pass away. The Lord has sworn by himself, the Lord of hosts has declared, I loathe the arrogance of Jacob. I detest his citadels. Therefore, I will deliver up the city and all it contains. And it will be, if 10 men are left in one house, they will die. Then one's uncle or his undertaker will lift up and to carry out his bones from the house. And he will say to the one who is in the innermost part of the house, is anyone else with you? And that one will say, no one. Then he will answer, keep quiet, for the name of the Lord is not to be mentioned. For behold, the Lord is going to command that the great house be smashed to pieces and the small house to fragments. Do horses run on rocks? Or does one plow them with oxen? Yet you have turned justice into poison, and the fruit of righteousness into wormwood. You who rejoice in Lodabar, and say, have we not by our own strength taken Carnaim for ourselves? For behold, I'm going to raise up a nation against you, O house of Israel, declares the Lord of hosts. And they will afflict you from the entrance of Hamath to the brook of Arabah. It's a very loaded section right there. So let's take a look at what Amos is talking about here. Now, as I said in a prior sermon, money itself is more of an exposer than it is a corrupter. Money and wealth are just inanimate objects that are completely at the mercy of the free will of whoever has possession of them. What does every human being have in their heart? Thanks to Adam. We all have sin of some kind. In fact, what was the very first sin in the garden? You can be your own God. You can be independent of God's regulations if you eat this fruit he's telling you not to eat. He's trying to restrain you from being your own boss. When people get a whole bunch of money, a whole bunch of possessions, a whole bunch of power, guess what starts getting into their head a lot of times? Made it. independent. I've got it on my own. I'm comfortable. I don't have to worry about a thing. Or do you? That's what happened here. Zion was at ease. So first he looks at the problems of living at ease. Now here's something that I don't want misinterpreted here. The Bible does command us to rest one day out of 7. There's nothing inherently wrong with having money. In fact, the Selah verse I selected today, from Luke 6:24, is one of the more controversial ones in the Bible that fits into the sermon, where Jesus says, "But woe to you who are rich, for you're receiving your comfort in full." If you have made pursuing money your number one priority, you aren't caring about others, Jesus says, that's all you're going to get. You ain't getting a reward in heaven for that. Nobody else is going to help you if you haven't helped them. In fact, Job, in the book of Job, it says he was very rich, that his heart wept for the poor, and he did what he could to help. Zion was at ease. Why? Zion was fortified, both by a natural forest, it's believed. They had a strong military at this time. It was one of the most prosperous times in Israel's history. They were the capital of Israel, so you want your army there to protect them. The kings are going to be there. It was the holy city. The temple's there. Surely God's not going to let Jerusalem get destroyed. That's where his temple is. He's also talking to Samaria. Samaria is up in the mountains. High ground, strategically it's smart in battle. Those who worship idols believe that their gods came from the mountains. In fact, the verse that gets misinterpreted a lot is, "I lift my eyes up into the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord." And songs have been written completely twisting and misinterpreting, thinking you got to look up in the mountains to see God come down. And that's not what that verse was talking about. The high places was where a lot of their idolatry happened. And people who weren't following God were putting their trust in these false idols. And since we're here, we're safe, we're good, nothing to worry about. And they lost sight of some important things. It says, "You're not grieving for your brother Joseph." Now before he does that, he wants to remind them of some things. He says, look at your neighbors. He mentions Gath, he mentions 2 other big shot cities. At least one of them was conquered by the Assyrians, and at least one or more of them was conquered by Israel. He's saying, hey look, those cities, they were at one time bigger and more powerful than you. They at one time had more reason to be cocky and comfortable and secure than you do. And where are they now? So that's why he was asking, are they not greater than you? They were at one time and they're not now. So why do you think you're above calamity? He says, will you bring near to violence? The theory that I've heard of commentators in this section is that there was a lot of conquest in Israel. It's believed that there were a lot of soldiers who were taking advantage of conquest and stealing as a result. It says, you brought violence onto others. You've gotten a lot of your wealth through violence. And the theory is that when they talked about having the best calves of the herd or the best lambs of the flock to eat, it may have even been stolen. Over 100 years ago, there was a big ship called the Titanic. There were people joking about how it's so big and so strong, not even God could sink it. Bad statement to make. Hits an iceberg, goes down, kills hundreds of people. Your life is a breath. You're a vapor in the wind. Your life is unpredictable. You don't know what the future holds. You don't know what you could lose. Years ago we saw the Moody Institute of Science had a series of a bunch of different videos, mostly science, but one was about empty cities and fallen civilizations. He shows patterns in one scene of various cultures that would go up and then change a little bit, and then eventually they would all go down. And one of them that was the most fascinating was Rome. It literally went straight up to a climax, and just as fast as it went up, it went right down. That fast. Mostly from internal problems. They get so big and so powerful. They were invincible to everybody else, but not to their own moral decay, from inside. He addresses a problem with self-indulgence. And again, if God's blessed you with resources, there is nothing inherently wrong with enjoying them once in a while. But there's a problem with wasting what God gave you. Is you're taking the young, you're killing the veal, the calf, the young mutton of the lamb. Some of it you may have stolen. And you're getting spoiled with all that. Nothing can make you happy. You're lying on beds of ivory. Where does ivory come from? Yeah, you got to kill some animals for it. As long as you're eating the meat along with it, that's fine. But if you're so spoiled, you got to have a bed of ivory so much, you got to cause all that death for it. Kind of spoiled. They were wasting their musical talent. And again, I even said this in a prior sermon. There is nothing inherently wrong with a secular song with an innocent message. God gave you a gift, you can use it. Michael W. Smith wrote a couple of love songs. He's a Christian artist. That's fine. But if it's all you're doing, and it's distracting you from what God wants you focused on, that's a problem. And it's a waste of His talent. There comes a point, at least, of that. They misappropriated what God gave them. He says, you're drinking wine out of sacrificial bowls. The least we can derive from this is, you are so addicted to liquor. It's not good enough for you just to have a normal glass and refill it again and have that. You got to down a whole sacrificial bowl worth of wine in one sitting. You're boozing up. Some other theories are these sacrificial bowls are what either the really rich would have for worshiping false idols, or possibly worse yet, they were believed to be princes and even priests mentioned in all this. They couldn't have misappropriated God's sacrificial bowls. But the bottom line was they were spoiled and misappropriating what God gave them. Yeah, and obviously they had a problem with idolatry. They worshipped ultimately their materialism. They were distracted. They were into their personal pleasures, their comforts, their wine, their songs, their possessions, because they were turning a blind eye to a serious problem on the horizon. He says, you're not caring about your brother Joseph. Parts of Israel had already been conquered by the Assyrians. They hadn't got all of it yet. Some of the outskirts closer to the, I believe, the western part. But up in Zion, we're comfortable. Forget about the fact that our brothers are captured. We're not going to put on a sword and rescue them. That's their problem. We're right here. We're fat, comfortable, and happy. That's all that matters. It ain't going to bug us here. Wrong. And I mentioned even in a prior sermon, when Jews were being rounded up in Germany, they would often get put on trains with lime, be yelling for help, beating on the train. And when they drove by a church on Sunday morning, beating on their train, you know what they'd do in the church?
Close the windows.
They'd close the windows and they'd sing louder to drown them out. And once the train passed, they'd go back to a normal volume. Even things that could potentially be godly were used for evil if it was distracting you from what God wanted you to care about. I applaud the churches in Pittsburgh. I believe there was a Presbyterian church who held a vigil to reach out to these Jews who were experiencing death after the shooting there. And it says, do horses plow on rocks? Do oxen plow on rocky ground? The implied answer is no. There's believed to be a double meaning here. He says, number one possible meaning is you're wasting your life. Okay? You're investing in your comfort and you're never satisfied. And you're plowing on these rocks, it's going to get you no fruit ultimately. The other meaning I've heard of this is, at some point prophets aren't going to keep wasting their time on you. You have been warned and warned. And we're still trying to plow on you to help you. But any common sense person would say, you plow on rocks, you're wasting your time. Amos is saying, you've had all your warnings. I'm giving you one more. You better turn it around. What was God's response to their addiction to pleasures? their self-centeredness. He says there's going to be death in families. A house full of 10 people, no one's going to survive, except maybe one lucky person hidden inside, so that when the undertaker comes by, he says, now that this is it. That's all the family there. They're all dead. And here's what I found really interesting. It says in here that the undertaker is going to say, don't mention the name of the Lord. One theory is they're so terrified of him that they won't call out to him even when they should. And another theory is God actually told the children of Israel, don't mention the names of false gods from Egypt. The belief is they may have actually gotten to the point where those who worshiped idols said, don't mention the name of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're into these idols now. They've still hardened their heart. He says, your great house is going to be destroyed, and your little house is going to be destroyed. The belief there is they probably had a summer and a winter home, many of these people. He says, it's going to be destroyed. Your banqueting is going to be gone. The Assyrians are going to bring tyranny. You're at your climax right now. And it's about to come to an end. Does any of this sound painfully familiar to anyone here? Right now, we are at one of the most prosperous times in our country's history. Unemployment is super low. It's real tempting to think we get everything we need. We can relax now. And yet, there's a lot of violence going on. There's so much anger in the country over it that we can't even watch a football game without seeing a protest of our anthem. We have thousands of people trying to break into our country because they want greed and because they think there's space for them. Because we've killed about 50 million plus of our own. It happens all the time, every election. People who support abortion keep getting reelected because the economy is more important. Education is more important. Free health care is more important. We're so focused on having our own comfort that we don't care about the weak in our own country. And at some point, we can't keep running from it forever. There are hurting people all around you who need help. Excuse me for getting on a soapbox for a second, but it always made me so sick when I see a bumper sticker that says, we are the 99%. Saw that when I was working at Lowe's. My answer is, no, you're not. Do you know how I know that? You have a car to put that bumper sticker on, and you are shopping at a home improvement store right now. I was in Dominican Republic several times. They got to have a whole bunch of churches in a small area because people only go to church if it's close enough to walk to. At best, people may have a motorcycle to get around. If you have a family, you're walking to church or you don't go. Not a lot of people have cars there. So the fact that you have a car puts you maybe top 5%. My guess is you're shopping at a home improvement store. You got a big television at home. You've got a house at home with running water, reliable electricity. You are in the top 1% by the world standards. You want to gripe and complain about people being more rich than you? Why don't you redistribute your wealth? Go spend some time in a poor country helping out a nonprofit organization. See real poverty. Learn what you can live without. Care about your fellow man who's hurting, who is less than you. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you for your word. Thank you for your warning that you gave to the children of Israel and that you give to us today. Lord, I ask that you would open our eyes to the things that matter. Help us to take your blessings and be a blessing to others. Help us to remember you and that we need you for every breath, no matter how much or little we have. Dear Lord, I ask that you seal this message on our hearts, that your peace would be with everyone here. I ask that you would guide the decisions we all make in our personal lives and how we affect others. And Lord, thank you for bringing everyone here today. This time I pray that your face would shine on them, that you would bless them, and you would care for all of them. In Jesus' name, amen. And go in peace.